In my last video, I detailed the most underrated cards from the EX Deoxys set, and at the top of that list was Manectric. And before anyone can jump on my case and say Manectric actually saw play, I thought I would go ahead and post the singular deck list where that card saw play, and it was in Turn 2 Zapdos. Or, you know, because Zapdos already has 2 in its name, people just called it ZapTurnDos. A dedicated single type deck centered around electric type Pokemon, all of which I think are underrated, working together in stupendous ways. I am excited to talk about this one. Let's get into ZapTurnDos. At the basis of this deck, we have these 2 basic Pokemon, and we have a full playset of Electrike and Voltorb. No Dunsparce, no Jirachi, no other starting Pokemon other than one of these 2 cards. In order to accomplish the goal of this deck, we need to start with one of these 2 cards. So these are the only basic Pokemon in the deck other than Zapdos EX. In order to accomplish our Turn 2 Zapdos EX drop, we need to start with one of these Pokemon and use the Recharge attack in order to accelerate a Lightning Energy into play, so that at the end of our first turn attacking, either Electrike or Voltorb has 2 Lightning Energy attached to it. That sets up a Zapdos EX drop on turn 2. So as soon as we have this card in our hand on turn 2, there's plenty of ways to search it up. We drop it onto the bench and activate its Legendary Ascent Poke Power. It automatically moves into the active position and pulls those 2 Lightning Energy off of your Electrike or your Voltorb onto this Zapdos EX. All you have to do is add your energy per turn and you are ready to hit your opponent's active for either 50 or 70 damage. That is a lot to deal with on turn 2 or 3 depending on who ends up going first. If your opponent isn't familiar with turn 2 Zapdos, they probably assume that they were up against some type of Manectric Electrode Synergy deck, not knowing that you could just drop this thing out of nowhere, fully power it, and continuously hit them with 70 damage turn after turn after turn with a basic Pokemon that has 110 HP. Blitzing your opponent like this would generally put them so far behind in the early game that they can't really come back. And the simplicity of the strategy in this deck made it pretty easy to pull off. I mean, the entire strategy of the deck is just start with a Voltorb or an Electrike, accelerate an energy, get a Zapdos EX in your hand, and then start blitzing your opponent. Of course, we did need some more Pokemon in this deck, and we already have Electrike and Voltorb, so why not include their Stage 1 evolutions as alternate attackers? That's where Manectric comes in. Its ability to snipe for 20 makes it an excellent cleanup attacker for anything that Zapdos EX wasn't able to OHKO, and then much like Zapdos EX, it can deal a bunch of damage for 3 energy. Power up for this attack is further simplified by the fact that Electrike can accelerate one of those energy before you evolve, making Manectric another turn 2 Pokemon in this deck. In the same vein, Electrode is a turn 2 option. You accelerate a Lightning Energy with Voltorb on its turn attacking. Next turn you evolve, use your energy per turn, and you are ready to either get some cleanup kills with Swift, dealing 30 damage for 1 energy, or just straight up obliterate whatever EX your opponent has on the opposite side of the field by handing it an auto knockout through mass destruction, trading your 1 prize Pokemon for their 2 prize Pokemon that they've probably invested a considerable amount of energy in already. It's rare that you get to whip out the full mass destruction, but when you do, boy howdy does it feel good. Blowing yourself up and taking your opponent with you is pretty fun, but it does come at a cost since you will be tossing 3 Lightning Energy into the discard. A common tech card that can ruin your turn 2 Zapdos Assault is Wobbuffet. So because of Wobbuffet, we're going to run a couple copies of Space Center as a counter stadium that also shuts down Wobbuffet and lets you get in with some big early game damage from Zapdos EX. With this deck, it's super important not only to have energy in hand, but to also recycle energy from your discard, so Mr. Stone's Project is a great supporter to include. Here's a sample deck list. In addition to having a couple copies of Space Center, we also have a couple copies of Battle Frontier to help shut down the Pidgeot engines early game. 2 copies of Scott will also help you accomplish that as quickly as possible. 3 copies of Pokemon Reversal will help you score some key knockouts. further disrupting your opponent's strategy early game. The 3 copies of Super Scoop Up allow you to return Zapdos EX to your hand whenever it is in danger of being knocked out, allowing you to reuse its Legendary Ascent to just plop it back into play and have it attacking immediately. All around a very powerful deck when you can pull it off. The only time this deck really falls down in the early game is if you cannot get a Zapdos EX into your hand on turn 2, which can happen, especially if you're bad at coin flips and Dual Ball does not grab you the Zapdos. This deck can struggle in the mid to late game, so if you're not able to pull off a turn 2 or turn 3 Legendary Ascent, Zapdos EX, Electron Crush, fucking deal with it kind of turn, the deck can chug. One of the major strengths here is that this deck doesn't really care about lock decks. It definitely doesn't care about Rock Lock. I mean, what are you going to do? Devolve my Manectric? It's not all that important. We really just want Electrike and Voltorb to accelerate energy so that we can pull off a turn 2 Zapdos EX. The core of this deck is just basic Pokemon. You can trainer lock me with Vileplume EX, it isn't going to matter. Most of my trainers are going to be burned by turn 2 anyway, as I'm just trying to get that initial Zapdos EX into play. You can power lock me with Muck EX. This deck, though not as good without Legendary Ascent, it still works pretty well. Really, all you have to worry about this deck is the fact that it can beat itself if your setup isn't fast enough, or if you're up against a Lantern. Lantern can be pretty scary to this deck since Zapdos EX is weak to Electric. And the deck does tend to have a weakness towards spread damage decks. If you're not evolving up your Electrikes and you have just a bunch of Voltorbs on your bench, then yeah, Dark Tyranitar Spinning Tail can destroy you. Which is why you just have to win as quickly as possible. That's the point of the deck. That is the point of every turn 2 deck. Outspeed your opponent and hit them hard enough to where it's either impossible for them to recover or very difficult, allowing you to gain a very important advantage on turn 2. Of course, this is the fastest, most streamlined version of this deck. As I mentioned earlier, it can chug a bit in the mid to late game if you haven't already gained an incredible advantage by then. From this turn 2 archetype, there were other archetypes that spawned centered around Zapdos that had the ability to Electron Crush on turn 2, but also included options to develop more strategy in the mid to late game. So we will be talking more about those in the coming weeks. There's a lot of bird love here at the end of 2005. So if you enjoy the playstyle of Zapdos EX, make sure you stay tuned for the Birds deck and ZRE. Be sure to comment down below to let me know what you think about this build, what you think about this format, this 2005 season. I don't know, give me your hottest takes about electricity. Those comments create fun discussions that I enjoy on the channel, but they also go a long way in getting my videos seen and promoting and growing the channel, so I appreciate all of them. Thanks for showing up for ZapTurnDos. I hope to see you on many future videos.